There is a certain kind of person who is very strange, almost unsettlingly perceptive. They walk into a room and almost instantly feel that something is profoundly off. No one is raising their voice. There's no overt drama unfolding before their eyes. But their brain has already finished scanning everything, processing subtle cues. An avoided glance, a forced smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes, a sentence that sounds perfectly normal, but is full of hidden, fake energy. Many people think this kind of acute observation is a superpower, a wonderful gift. But the truth is, this sharp awareness is actually a psychological trap. The problem is that their brain has no off switch for these observations. They can't just enjoy the moment, letting things simply be. They take it home, pick it apart, analyzing every tiny piece, and replay it in their head again and again like a broken record. They're the kind of person who can turn one small silence into an entire universe of thoughts. But if you know someone like this, or if you are someone like this, you already know it isn't easy. It's a constant mental effort, because hyper-awareness is not just an intelligence issue. It's deeper. It's about constantly seeing the hidden layers of meaning, layers that other people walk right past without ever noticing. It can feel like a gift, a special perception unique to them, but it is also a cruel burden that slowly drains all of your emotional energy. Today, we are going to decode the psychology of people who are over-aware and how they can avoid being swallowed by their own mind, finding balance. First, we have to dig into the origin of this sharp awareness. Why do some people become so intensely aware of their surroundings? Empirical psychology usually divides this phenomenon into two main groups. For the first group, this sensitivity is simply inborn, a part of their very being. Science calls them highly sensitive persons, often abbreviated as HSP, people who carry the trait known as sensory processing sensitivity, or SPS. Their nervous system, from the moment they are born, is like an ultrafine filter, a filter that automatically absorbs and feels everything more intensely than usual. For them, the world always appears in extremely high resolution, every detail sharp. However, for the second group, over-awareness is not something they were born with. It is an inheritance of survival itself. Neuroscience calls this state hypervigilance, a heightened state of alert. It often takes root in an emotionally unstable environment in the past. Most commonly, this unstable environment was experienced during childhood. Imagine a child growing up in a house where the mood of the adults changes like the weather. That child cannot live innocently. Their childhood is shadowed. They have to learn how to become a radar station, constantly scanning. They might have been the kind of child who memorized the sound of car tires, the unique sound of tires rolling into the garage, a distinct pattern, just to know whether their father was coming home drunk or sober. They learned to hear the specific sound of a kitchen cabinet slamming and instantly measure how angry their mother was from that sound. They knew exactly when to step into the living room and smile, and when to disappear quietly into the corner. Biologically speaking, their amygdala, the brain's danger alarm center, has been constantly activated. It records a message. This environment is not safe. I have to keep scanning to avoid danger. No one taught them this. Their nervous system automatically built a network of neurons. This network helps them predict emotional disasters before they even happen. Over time, that survival vigilance transforms into a heightened awareness. That awareness grows so deep that it becomes an intrinsic part of their identity. When they become adults, they often look back and blame themselves. Why do I always overthink? Something must be wrong with me, they wonder. But no, they are not broken. They are simply carrying a kind of intelligence shaped by survival. The shield that once protected them has now fused into their very skin. So, when that shield, that massive awareness, enters adult life, how does it actually show up? Let's move to sign 1, living in constant analysis mode. This is the clearest sign and also the one that consumes the most energy. For a typical person, a conversation is just a conversation. But for them, the mind is always running a hidden, complex equation. Take a real example. Their boss sends a message on Slack at 4 o'clock p.m. Come see me for a minute later. For other people, that's simply a meeting on the schedule. But for them, the moment they read the message, a wave of tension immediately appears. They sense something unusual in the wording, a kind of invisible coldness. They feel the atmosphere of the sender and instantly begin questioning themselves. Is my boss upset? Did I mess something up? They don't just hear words. They notice the 3-second pause before a compliment. They catch a very slight, almost imperceptible change in the other person's breathing. Part of this phenomenon is related to the activity of the default mode network, DMN. This is the brain system involved in reflection and self-referential thinking. In most people, the DMN becomes active mainly during daydreaming or rest. But in people who are overly aware, this network tends to be much more active. This makes the mind slip into constant analysis and interpretation. Half of them is nodding, smiling, holding a cup of coffee, participating in life. But the other half is diligently taking notes, comparing details, and analyzing everything. The result is that their mind rarely gets any real rest. They can feel utterly exhausted, even after spending the whole day sitting in an office. This is because their brain has just finished running a hidden marathon. That analysis does not only point outward, observing others. It also turns the camera inward, creating sign 2, hyper self-awareness. In psychology, metacognition is the ability to think about your own thinking. It is controlled by the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive control center. Everyone possesses this remarkable ability to reflect on their thoughts. But for them, it's a switch that never truly turns off. They don't just feel an emotion. They meticulously monitor and dissect it. The familiar chain reaction often unfolds in a predictable, almost ritualistic manner. First, an emotion appears, a sudden, unbidden wave. This is immediately followed by an urge to analyze it, to break it down into its components. And then, inevitably, comes the judgment, a harsh internal critique. Imagine them walking outside, enjoying a pleasant day, when suddenly a wave of sadness washes over them. Instead of simply allowing themselves to feel that fleeting moment of melancholy, they immediately cross their arms, a defensive posture, and begin to judge themselves. Why am I sad? Does this sadness even make sense in my current situation? I should feel grateful because I have a good job, a stable life, so why do I feel empty? I'm terrible for feeling this way, for not appreciating what I have. Even moments of pure joy, typically embraced without reservation, get meticulously dissected. They are at a vibrant dinner party, the air filled with laughter and good cheer. They just shared a hearty laugh at a friend's joke, a genuine, unforced outburst. But the very next second, a part of their mind detaches, floating near the ceiling. It's looking down, evaluating their own performance, their own authenticity. Did I laugh too loudly? Was that perhaps a little over the top? A bit fake? It's like dancing while constantly staring at your reflection in a mirror. You're trying to fix every posture, every movement, striving for perfection. They may not miss a single step, their execution flawless. But in this constant self-monitoring, they lose the effortless sense of flow. Their depth of analytical awareness increases with every passing moment. Yet, their natural uninhibited presence slowly, almost imperceptibly, disappears. When that analytical camera runs for too long, it leads them into the next profound realization. This is sign 3. Losing innocence in relationships. Their deep awareness makes them start to see the hidden backstage of human behavior. Psychology refers to this as strong inference about other people's intentions. It's closely related to the ability known as theory of mind. They begin to realize that people do not always say exactly what they truly think or feel. Consider a coworker who brings them a coffee, a seemingly kind gesture. The coworker then praises the project they just completed, offering a compliment. Instead of simply enjoying the positive feedback, their brain immediately scans for possible ulterior motives. What favor does this person want in return for this sudden kindness? Are they hoping I'll share sensitive customer data with them later on? They learn that kindness sometimes comes with unspoken conditions, a subtle price tag. Affection can sometimes be a calculated investment, a strategic move rather than pure emotion. And the confident swagger of a man on a date might simply be a carefully constructed curtain. A curtain skillfully hiding his underlying fear of rejection, a common human vulnerability. This acute perception creates a quiet, almost imperceptible kind of loss. It's not the dramatic, overt loss of childhood innocence, which is often remembered. Instead, it is the profound loss of relational innocence, the ability to fully trust the surface of words, to accept them at face value, is no longer there. As a result, a simple compliment always seems to carry multiple, hidden layers of meaning. An apology never feels truly complete, never fully satisfying. They suspect the other person is apologizing merely to calm the situation, not because they genuinely accept fault or feel remorse. A promise, once a solid declaration, now sounds fragile, easily broken. They don't become bitter or hateful toward the world around them. They simply become extremely cautious, navigating relationships with a heightened sense of vigilance. And sometimes they feel a profound sense of loneliness, even when surrounded by a vibrant crowd. This is because no one else seems to perceive the deeper layer of truth they are constantly observing. This isn't merely about logical reasoning. It's a profound insight that deeply infiltrates their emotional core. This leads directly to sign 4, an empathy that is perpetually switched on, an inescapable state of being. For these individuals, empathy isn't a skill they consciously choose to deploy when a friend is upset. Instead, it's an inherent state, an intrinsic part of their being that simply cannot be deactivated. Imagine them walking into a meeting room, a space filled with unspoken tension. No one utters a single word, yet they immediately sense the palpable weight of irritation hanging between two coworkers. Their mind functions much like a highly absorbent sheet of paper, soaking up every nuance. Psychology refers to this specific ability as cognitive empathy, understanding with the mind. However, for those who are overly aware, it transcends mere intellectual comprehension. It seamlessly transitions into emotional empathy, a direct absorption of another's feelings. They actually internalize and live inside another person's pain as if it were their very own. This intense phenomenon is intimately linked to specific neural systems, particularly mirror neurons. When they observe someone expressing an emotion, these specialized neurons in their brain fire. They activate precisely as if the overly aware person themselves were directly experiencing that same emotion. But for an overly aware individual, this process escalates into full-blown absorption. Consider someone sitting next to them on a bus, nervously tapping their foot, a subtle sign of anxiety. Suddenly, without conscious effort, their own heart begins to beat faster, mirroring the stranger's unease. A friend confides in them about the profound pain of their divorce, sharing their raw vulnerability. After parting ways and returning home, that intense pain lingers, sitting heavily in their chest for 3 days. What is the inevitable result of this constant emotional absorption? They frequently become the designated emotional regulator for everyone in their immediate vicinity. They instinctively know how to soften their voice, choosing their words with meticulous care. Their gentle demeanor and thoughtful communication are designed to calm any agitated atmosphere. People naturally gravitate towards them because they feel genuinely understood and validated. However, the immense price for this constant emotional labor is often profound exhaustion. They effectively become a container, holding the emotional waste and burdens of others. And at the close of each day, a harsh truth remains largely unrecognized. Very few people ever acknowledge that the one who always understands others also desperately needs understanding themselves. Those suppressed emotions, the ones they absorb and hold, do not simply vanish into thin air. Instead, they are directly transferred and manifest within their own physical body. This brings us to sign 5, when heightened awareness becomes intimately tied to the body and anxiety. Awareness, in this context, is not solely confined to the realm of the mind or abstract thought. Science defines this specific concept as interoception, the innate ability to sense the internal state of one's body. This crucial process is primarily handled by the insular cortex, a key region in the brain. Individuals who are overly aware often possess an exceptionally sensitive interoception system. Consider a simple act: They drink a cup of espresso, feeling the familiar jolt. As expected, their heart beats a little faster due to the stimulating effects of the caffeine. For most people, this sensation is simply interpreted as a pleasant surge of alertness. But for their highly attuned nervous system, the brain detects the accelerated heartbeat with alarm. It rapidly flips through its internal data records, searching for familiar patterns. And then, in a sudden, urgent proclamation, it shouts, "Fast heartbeat equals danger." The internal alarm blares. We're about to have a panic attack. Prepare for impact. Normal, everyday physical sensations, which are innocuous for others, become dramatically exaggerated warning signals. This creates a brutal, self-perpetuating anxiety loop that is incredibly difficult to escape. A subtle, physical sensation makes its initial appearance, a tiny ripple in their internal landscape. Then, their brain, with its heightened sensitivity, immediately misinterprets it as an impending danger. Then the body activates a stress response, releasing hormones like cortisol. This leads to even stronger physical sensations throughout their system. The result is that their body becomes a constant stream of emergency data. They feel restless and uneasy all the time, even when nothing truly bad is happening. This constant internal alarm makes simple moments feel charged and uncertain. When signals from the body and emotions become overwhelming, the mind starts searching for one final escape. This is a desperate attempt to restore a sense of order to their inner world. That is when awareness quietly transforms from a lens of observation into a strategy of control. This is not control over others in a forceful way, but a subtle inner defense mechanism. They operate based on an unspoken belief. If they can predict every possible variable, they will not be surprised by pain or caught off guard by life's challenges. For them, understanding becomes a kind of armor, a protective layer against the unknown. They believe that seeing the landing point of disappointment ahead of time will prevent them from collapsing. Their mind begins running simulations non-stop, quietly and endlessly in the background. They ask themselves, what if that person suddenly pulls away? What if everything they are working so hard to build disappears tomorrow? If the worst situation really happens, how should they react so they do not fall apart? This constant mental rehearsal prepares them for every conceivable negative outcome. This leads to a state called analysis paralysis, where overthinking becomes a cage. They get trapped inside a maze of assumptions, meticulously dissecting every possible risk. They are living in 10 different versions of the future, even when the present moment has not fully happened yet. This constant vigilance keeps them from ever fully belonging to the present. Their minds are always a few steps ahead, anticipating what might come next. The cruelest result of this protective strategy is the trade-off it creates. In trying to stay ahead of pain, they slowly step outside their own life. Instead of participating in the flow of life with all its uncertainty and beauty, they begin managing life like a high-risk project, carefully analyzing every move. Protection replaces presence, leaving them exhausted from constantly guarding against the ghosts of the future. This vigilance, while well-intentioned, drains their energy and joy. So, what can overly aware people do to find relief? They cannot simply turn off their awareness, as it's an intrinsic part of who they are. It is like asking someone with perfect vision to try to see everything as blurry. The solution is not to become less aware, but to shift how they engage with their awareness. The solution is to stop carrying everything, to release the burden of constant absorption. In psychotherapy, this usually involves setting emotional boundaries. It also means adjusting patterns of thinking that lead to overabsorption. They need to learn how to notice things, but refuse to absorb them. This is a crucial distinction. Observation without internalizing the emotional weight. People who manage to move beyond this burden often anchor themselves in 3 freeing principles. First, not every silence is a hidden message, nor does it carry deep meaning. If someone replies slowly to a text, sometimes they are simply exhausted. It's not always a reflection of your worth or a deliberate slight. If a coworker walks past without smiling, maybe they just have a headache. Their internal state is often about them, not a personal attack on you. They learn not to personalize everything, to create a healthy distance. This practice helps them to detach from situations that do not directly involve them. Second, not every emotion that appears needs an action to solve it. Sometimes, emotions are just passing clouds in the sky of our consciousness. They don't always require immediate intervention or a grand solution. Learning to simply acknowledge an emotion without reacting transforms its power. This allows them to be present with their feelings without being consumed by them. It's a powerful step towards emotional freedom and inner peace. Anxiety may show up, but instead of rushing to analyze why, they simply observe it. They might say, "Oh, my heart is beating fast. It's just a physical sensation." They observe it without judgment and let it pass naturally. Third, not every insight needs to be spoken or acted on immediately. They may see someone's insecurity clearly, like a transparent veil, but they don't have to become that person's therapist. They may notice instability in a relationship, like a wobbly structure. Sometimes the best response is simply to step back and create space. They begin to realize that clarity is only a gift when it comes with boundaries. They learn what belongs to them to handle, and what belongs to the world to leave alone, like a distant landscape. When they practice this kind of letting go, something remarkable begins to happen inside them. Their awareness does not disappear, it merely transforms. It softens, like a harsh light dimming. It matures, like a young plant growing into a sturdy tree. They still see deeply into human nature, understanding its complexities, but they no longer cling to the flaws of others, releasing them like balloons. They can still feel the energy of a room very strongly, like a subtle current, but they are no longer pulled into its current, maintaining their own steady course. The fundamental shift happens inside them, a quiet revolution. They move from using awareness to predict, like a weather forecast, to using it to be present, fully engaged in the now. They move from fear to curiosity, embracing the unknown. Instead of analyzing whether someone's smile is fake, they simply enjoy the moment. They savor a sunny afternoon and a good cup of coffee, fully immersed. Their life finally becomes lighter, like a burden lifted, not because the outside world suddenly becomes simpler, or because people suddenly become less complicated and easier to understand. The world is still full of contradictions, a tapestry of opposing forces. Life becomes lighter because they stop trying to carry every equation of the world on their shoulders. They cannot turn off the ceiling light in their mind, which is always on, but they can change its intensity like a dimmer switch. They can turn it from a sharp laser that exposes every flaw into a warm, gentle candle, casting a soft glow, a candle bright enough to understand human fragility, yet gentle enough to warm themselves as well, with comforting light. These are the people who think deeply, exploring profound ideas. The people who feel deeply, experiencing emotions intensely. If you ever look at them and notice their quietness, understand that it is not indifference, but a profound inner state. It is a beautiful form of wisdom, cultivated over time. A wisdom that has learned to understand life's intricate dance, instead of being imprisoned by it, trapped in its patterns. Recognizing the hidden pain in everyone around you often feels like a heavy burden disguised as a beautiful gift. Your relentless awareness absorbs the silent suffering of the world until you slowly forget your own voice. You are allowed to gently release the emotional baggage of others and simply breathe for yourself. It is never selfish to close your doors temporarily and tend to your own exhausted spirit. How might your daily life change if you stopped trying to heal the invisible wounds of everyone else? If this resonated with you, write a sentence in the comments so others know they are heard. May your profound empathy become a gentle sanctuary instead of a lonely anchor in the dark.